I always describe my Crown of Shards world as Gladiator meets Game of Thrones with a kick butt heroine. And in this case, the heroine is Everly Blair, and her ability is that she's actually immune to magic, which is kind of a rare gift in her world. And when I was thinking about the world, and I think because I love to write fight scenes, and I was thinking, okay, what kind of a character, a fantasy character, could I have where I could write a lot of fight scenes? And gladiators popped in my head, and it was something that I hadn't done before. And again, once I had the kind of the theme that I'm going to do this gladiator world, a lot of the world building fell into place because I made the gladiators almost like circus troops. They tour from city to city. People have their favorite gladiators and troops. They fight in these big tournaments. It's very much like a whole production around the gladiators. It's entertainment, but it's also this, brutality as well. So these were some of the things that helped me to kind of shape the world building. Every reader is different. I get comments that run from like, oh, this is too bloody to, oh, it's not bloody enough. And, why doesn't she kill people before halfway through the book and things like that. So you never know like how someone's going to react to a book. So as an author, you have to figure out in your own mind, like, what kind of fight scenes do I like writing the best? How bloody do I want to make them? How does it fit in with the world building and the tone of the book and the genre that I'm writing? It's a lot of different things to think about. For me, I really like writing fight scenes, and like the bloodier the better as far as I'm concerned. And then too, it's not just saying that, oh, she stabs him in the chest and he falls down. It's kind of, for me, like a lot of about the little details, like what kind of a sound does a sword make when you hit somebody with it? How does the air feel? What does the blood look like? How is your heart racing in your ears? Is it about to pop out of your chest? Kind of like the little sensory things for me, I think really make a fight scene kind of leap off the page for readers to envision. So Only Bad Options is the first book in my Galactic Bonds science fiction fantasy series. It's kind of like Star Wars meets Bridgerton. So it has science fiction elements and magic elements. We have people who basically have telepathy and telekinesis and kind of these mental abilities, and magical weapons. And then we also have the backdrop of spaceships and planets and blasters and kind of your classic kind of sci-fi weaponry and gadgets and things. And the story focuses on Vesper Quill. She is a lab rat, which is basically an engineer, and she uncovers this massive conspiracy in this corporation. And so she gets thrust into this adventure, and along the way, she meets this guy. His name is Kyrian, and he's basically an elite warrior slash assassin. And the two of them have to kind of team up to figure out, who wants both of them dead and why. And then along the way, they discover that they have a true bond, this like connection that really neither one of them wants. And so, figuring out how to potentially break it is also a big part of Only Bad Options, the first book. And the new book, second book in the series, Only Good Enemies, will be out on July 18th. And again, I was talking about sophomore books earlier. And I really enjoyed writing this book and just kind of digging deeper into Kyrian and Vesper's relationship and kind of all the problems that having this bond, brings to the two of them, and basically how everybody is after their power and wants to use them, and then how they decide to deal with all of that. My Gargoyle Queen series, the main heroine is Gemma Ripley. She is the crown princess of one of the kingdoms, and basically readers meet her in Kill the Queen, the first book in my Crown of Shards world, but she's a little girl in that book. And she survives a royal massacre. So this book is set about 15 years later. The first book is called Capture the Crown, and we see a grown-up Gemma. And one of the things I kind of wanted to explore in this book is, she survived this really traumatic thing as a child, and how does it, shape her as an adult? So Gemma has kind of turned the trauma into like this desire to protect her kingdom, and she goes undercover as a spy in an enemy kingdom and kind of figures out, how she can use her magic to protect herself and her people. And there's a really, like I said, dastardly villain who has like this massive plot against her kingdom. And of course, there's an enemy prince that she has all these feelings for. So it's just kind of everything that I love about epic fantasy romance. With the Gargoyle Queen books, I knew some of the big things that I wanted to happen in book 1, book 2, and book 3. And again, this is another time where kind of the titles played into it, because the first book is Capture the Crown, the second book is Tear Down the Throne, and the third book is Conquer the Kingdom. So I knew for Conquer the Kingdom, the third book, I really wanted to have this, these massive battles for control of a kingdom. So I kind of knew some of the turning points to get from like book 1 to book 3, but I am also a total pantser. So I don't do a lot of plotting or outlining. I just kind of think about my heroine and sit down and start writing. So sometimes that works out well, and sometimes it does not work out well. But I think my subconscious comes into it a lot too. I think, just I like to think about the story a lot, even if I'm not writing it. And I think, things eventually kind of will work themselves out in my subconscious, and then I can put that down on the page. I always kind of joke and tell people that I write fantasy books, so I don't have to do any research and I can make up the whole thing. But you do a fair amount of research, even with fantasy books. So Section 47 is basically my urban fantasy spies with magic series, kind of like if James Bond had magic, which again, spy stories are something else that I've always loved. So we have different abilities. Like Desmond is a galvanist. Basically, he can manipulate energy like electricity or kinetic energy, chemical energy, what have you. And then Charlotte has synesthesia, and she can basically hear whether someone is telling the truth. And then like any kind of document that she looks at, she can see the errors and mistakes in it. And that her power came about. I was talking to a friend of mine whose daughter has synesthesia, and she was talking about how like her daughter, when she smells something, it almost appears like a color to her. And yeah, I did a little bit more research into it, and I thought it was really interesting, kind of the way that different people interpret different things, how our senses. It's kind of like the cilantro question. Like some people love cilantro and some people hate it. And just like different things like that. Why do people see things one way or smell things one way or taste things a certain way? And so I thought that was a really interesting starting point to kind of build out a world where people have these abilities. I actually really like kind of Charlotte's best friend since she was a kid. His name is Gabriel, and he has this ability called phasing. He can basically walk through walls. And I was like, that would be so handy sometimes. I just did what I like to call a vomit draft of book 3. And for those of you who don't know what a vomit draft is, it's basically people have different words for it, but basically you just sit down and you write it, and you write the book. You don't edit, you don't revise, you don't go back. You just sit down and write it start to finish. And it's a big mess at the end, but at least you have something to work with. So that's just kind of the process that works the best for me, is the first vomit draft. Only Good Enemies will be out on July 18th. And then I'm working on a novella in my Galactic Bond series that is called Only Hard Problems, and that will be out in February of 2024. After that, I'm planning to write at least one more book in my Galactic Bond series, so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to get back to the Section 47 series with book 3. I hope to have that out sometime in 2024. And then actually I have an idea for a new sci-fi fantasy series that I would kind of like to write before the end of the year, but we'll see what happens. I am a full-time writer, so it is my main job, my main income. And like you said, if you have writer's block, it's like no words, no money to pay the bills. So you kind of got to keep going even when you don't want to. I would say, I always tell people to take it seriously. Even if you're just doing it for fun, set a time every day that you can, work on it, even if it's only like for 10 or 15 or 30 minutes. And then I also tell people to have fun with your writing, because nobody is going to write your book for you. And sitting at the computer, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, it's a tough, lonely business. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing as much as you can, then it's going to show on the page. And what I mean by that is, if you don't like zombie books, I wouldn't sit down and try to write a zombie book, because like I said, it's going to show on the final page. Write the story that you want to tell is what I always tell people.